Yo, what's up with y'all? It's cubeatz back with another tutorial video for y'all today. To show you guys how to make some catchy brass samples for Wheezy, so let's get straight to the video. So for this loop, I'm at 116 BPM. A lot of Wheezy type beats, and when you're making samples for them, a lot of them are a lot slower, like 115 to 120. So I recommend that BPM range. The first sound I'm using is from Contact. I'm using the Nucleus brass, and I'm just picking the staccato. This MIDI is actually very simple. What makes it kind of complicated is kind of just like the bounce and placement of the notes. So I started with this melody was I first started with this chord right here. It's basically just D, F, and A. These are two very simple basic chords using a lot of like dark samples. And then all I did was I brought the D, which was the root note, down an octave. And that's basically like the two chords you hear throughout the whole melody. So how I came up with the bounce of this melody was I first started with these stabs right here. Still using the same chords I showed earlier, just a bunch of stabs. And I knew to give it extra bounce, I had to add notes in between the chords, like these empty spaces right here. So first I started with this simple pattern, just adding these notes in the middle. And that already sounded a lot better, but it still sounded very plain and basic. So then I started to kind of add more to these mid notes right here. Kind of added like this stairway, this down stairway. And then that already sounded a lot better, but the last thing I did was down here with these root notes, I basically just moved the note and then I duplicated it. It covered more empty areas and it added more bounce. And then all I did was I copied that same pattern over. It's just, you can see, I moved the A to A sharp, and then I moved the D. And then I basically copied the same pattern over. I just switched it up a little bit at the end. I took the A and I pitched it up to A sharp. Then I added this note right here, and then I just took out the D, so it kind of has like a little pause before it goes into the next chords. So yeah, this little pattern right here is basically the same thing as earlier, that little stairway that I was showing. It's just instead of it going down, it's going up this time. And then having that pause right here really gives it bounce. And then the last thing I did was I did Alt R just to randomize the velocities. For the effects, I didn't really add much. I just cleaned up the sound. I first started with an EQ. I just took out the lows. I lowered some of the low mids, and I raised the highs for it to sound more crisp. I added a halftime just to kind of layer it, 10%, so it's kind of like tucked in the background, it's not too loud. And then on top I just added a reverb. I just turned the separation knob all the way to the left. The next sound I added was the Woodwinds from Nucleus. I basically added this to kind of treat it like a top melody to complement the brass. All I did was I stayed in key and then followed the same notes I used from the previous melody. It's just this little pattern right here, and then it just duplicates for the entire melody. The effects, I added a little bit of stereo separation and I panned it to the right. I lowered the volume just to kind of tuck it in the background. I didn't want it to be too loud. Then I added ambience. I just turned the mixer knob down. And then I added 3 EQs. First EQ I added was to kind of filter out the sound. I took out some of the highs and I took out all the lows. The second EQ was to take down this harsh frequency right here. And then same with the last one, it was just to take down another harsh frequency. This is how it sounds with no EQs. So you can tell the difference right there. The third sound I added was from Kinetic Treats. It's the electric train set. I kind of added this just as like a texture to the background. It's basically just one note playing, which is the root note. As you can tell, it has a lot of rhythm and bounce to it. For the effects, I made it 100% stereo, and I tucked it in the background by just lowering the volume. Added ambience, just turned the mix knob down. And then I added pancake. I just put it to 1/8. Then I added this gate from Gross Beat. It's just the 1/8 beat gate. I turned the attack knob up and then turned the mix down. Then I added this EQ just to kind of filter the sound out. Took out a lot of the lows and a little bit of the highs. The next song I added was this choir from Nucleus. I just picked the staccato phrases. It's the same notes from the brass earlier. I just took out some of the notes that were filling in the gaps in between the chords. For the effects, I panned it to the right and I made it more stereo. Then I added ambient reverb. Then I just EQ'd all the lows out. I lowered some of these harsh frequencies and I boosted a lot of the highs just for the sound more crisp. The next one I added was this lead from Omnisphere called the Anthem of Happiness. It's basically just these two notes playing here and there, and then I just duplicated the same pattern and I just pitched it up an octave. The effects, I made 100% stereo and I added fruity reverb. I just turned the separation knob all the way to the left. Then I added pancake. I just turned the mix knob down and I put it to 1/2. Then I added fruity stereo enhancer. I just went to the preset called 4 strings. This just also makes them more wide. Then I just EQ'd all the lows out. The last thing I added was the synth bass from Omnisphere. It's actually from Deuce's Wizard Omnibank. Very simple. It's just the root note, and then I cut it here to give it that pause effect, and then I add these notes at the end just to make it more unique. For the effects, all I did was I added an EQ. I took out some of the lows and all the highs, and then the last thing I did was I just came up with this little arrangement right here. I laid out the stems, and then I went to my master and I added an EQ. I lowered some of the lows and I lowered some of the high frequencies, which is the mids. There's a lot of mids in this sample, and then I raised the highs for it to be more crisp, and I just raised the volume right here, and then I exported it and pitched it down 100 cents, and this is the final sample. That was basically it for the video. I hope you guys did enjoy and learn something new. This loop is actually in my latest loop kit that just dropped. It's the Euphoria Volume 2 loop kit. 10 samples all around this Wheezy style. It also has a lot of dark southside type loops and orchestral loops for pyrex. A lot of vintage cubeatz and Frank Dukes type loops in there too. A lot of variety in this loop. It's completely free. It'll be the first thing in the description, so go cop that. And also make sure you guys follow me on Instagram. If you want to get my next loop kit early, make sure you guys do go follow me on Instagram. I usually do drop my loop kits over there early before I drop it on my YouTube page. And that's really it for the video. So if you guys did enjoy it, make sure you guys do leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another tutorial video or loop kit. And I'll see you in the next video.